Welcome to Anews. I'm Livestream and you're watching Türkiye Bağımsız. As the war in Ukraine enters a new and uncertain chapter, high-level contacts between Russian and U.S. intelligence chiefs continue quietly in the background, while President Zelenskiy turns to the Vatican for fresh diplomatic backing. At the same time, the Middle East is approaching a dangerous tipping point. Ceasefire negotiations to end the war in Gaza are stalling, Israeli-Lebanese tensions are rising, and regional actors are debating everything from security arrangements to long-term governance. These overlapping crises are redrawing the geopolitical map, creating new risks, new pressures, and new diplomatic responsibilities for countries across the region. Joining me today to discuss these global headlines are John Kovalich, Senior Research Editor at Issue Insight, Dr. Nurhan Al-Baya, Professor at the Istanbul Aydın University and Consultant for the UNDP, and Dr. Mehmet Çelik, Daily Sabah's Editorial Coordinator.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy continued his shuttle diplomacy Tuesday with a visit to Rome to meet with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. Zelensky says Ukraine and its European partners will soon be ready to present the U.S. with refined documents on a peace plan to end the war with Russia. Kyiv is under pressure from the White House to secure a quick peace, but is pushing back on a U.S.-backed plan proposed last month that is widely seen as favorable to Moscow. Ukrainian officials are also seeking strong security guarantees from partners in the event of a deal to prevent Russia from attacking again in the future. President Donald Trump's envoys have given Zelensky days to respond to a proposed peace agreement that would see Ukraine accept territorial losses in return for unspecified U.S. security guarantees. That's according to a report in the Financial Times on Tuesday. Zelensky said in a statement that new components of the deal hashed out with the British, French, and German leaders in London on Monday were more developed and ready for U.S. review. Russian President Vladimir Putin has said Ukraine must hand over its entire eastern Donbas region before Russia stops fighting, something which Zelensky has consistently rejected, while Trump said in an interview with Politico that Zelensky would have to get on the ball and start accepting things.
Welcome back to the program. A very warm welcome to my guests, Dr. Mehmet Çelik, John, and Dr. Nurhan Al-Baya. Welcome to the program today.
Thank you.
John, let's start with you. You are in Istanbul now. A few days ago, you were in Moscow. You know what the situation is over there. You know the latest developments. And there have been some developments as well. Yesterday's statement from the Kremlin, that says that Putin is saying that he does not want to restore the USSR or attack NATO. There have been many things. For example, this week there was a meeting as well in London. Zelensky was meeting his allies, President Macron, Merz, German Chancellor, and British Prime Minister Starmer. He also met the Pope yesterday. So there are some interesting things. But John, let's start with the mood in Russia. How important is the situation now? Because now we know the peace plan, which was made up of 28 points, it has now been revised to 20 points. There are some things that the Russians have omitted from that plan. And Trump is also pushing Ukraine to accept that peace plan. He's saying you need to submit, let's say it. Tell me, John, let's start with you.
I've been briefed on the various incarnations of the plans. First thing it's important to dispel, these are not peace plans. They're coexistence agreements, because peace is a state of mind, and Russia and Ukraine are not going to be at peace for decades, because there are far too many issues that need to be resolved that are not ones that you can put to paper and check off. And some of those go to, one example, the legal cases. There will be thousands of legal cases filed by Ukrainian citizens against not only the government of the Russian Federation, but Russian Federation companies. So that means anywhere where a Russian company has assets, there are going to be lawyers filing suits. So there are just tangible issues that aren't going to be able to be settled immediately. So what we're talking about are three big issues. And what is, again, somewhat tragic is that you will hear the coalition of the willing members, you will hear some within the Trump administration talk about, we're near the 10-meter line, we're very close. But why are they close? Because all of them have removed three issues from the discussion. The issues that they've removed for later are territory, are security guarantees, and use of the Russian government, the central bank assets. When you take out those three, it's easy to say, oh, we're making progress. We've gotten these other little issues. But what President Zelenskiy did in London, in Brussels, in the Vatican, and in Rome, performative, but do they truly move anything? No. President Trump is saying to President Zelenskiy, think of, I don't mean to be insulting, but think of President Trump at a table with a child. And he's saying to the child, eat your spinach. And the child's saying, I don't want my spinach. So the parent says, well, we're not going to the park unless you eat your spinach. I'm not going to eat it. We're not going to give you ice cream unless you eat the spinach. I'm not going to do it. Okay, then go to your room, or I'm just going to leave you here and go on my way. That's somewhat where we are, where President Trump is saying, President Zelenskiy and the coalition of willing keep talking about that an agreement favorable to Russia. President Trump looks at everyone and says, what planet are you on? Russia invaded Ukraine. Russia has 19% of Ukraine. They're not going to give it back. Therefore, when you say the agreement is favoring Russia, of course it is, because they're the ones that have invaded Ukraine. It's not up for Russia, and again, this is from President Trump's perspective, he's not looking saying, well, Russia should have the weak side because they're the aggressor. And so he's basically just moving to the end discussion, which is, this is about Russia keeping what it's got. Is Ukraine going to move the borders of the oblast to where Russia is, or are they going to give them this space? What's going to happen with the assets? And I'll end with the assets. What we're seeing is precisely what some of the Russian government predicted in February, March of 2022, which is everyone's fighting over these assets. Everyone's using them multiple times. And now the EU is saying, well, maybe we'll take 140 billion or 190 billion, we'll backstop it, we'll use it as a guarantee. That money's supposed to be used for reconstruction Ukraine. What happens if there's an agreement and then there's a, well, wait a minute, Russia, you owe us $500 billion. Russia's going to say, you already grabbed 320. We're not giving it to you twice. So that's sort of where we are. There's a little bit of performance and make-believe in what's going on.
Mehmet, I'll come to you now. There was a statement from the German Chancellor Merz. He said that Europe must become less dependent on the United States. How are you evaluating this statement? And at the same time, I want to ask you about another statement that was made by President Trump. He said, and it's regarding NATO, he said that Turkey may be difficult for NATO, but it is a vital ally. So how are you looking at all of these two statements?
Well, of course, looking at the latest developments in the past few years, I think Europe has realized that depending on the United States, largely, especially in terms of the political power internationally as well as military power, they have realized that they need to find a way to establish their own security architecture. How that will be realized and materialized, it's something else. Because, first of all, establishing that security architecture independent of United States without the US approval, it's difficult. Having a unified form within EU, it seems very difficult. The UK is another actor in the European continent that could have possible interference in that, how that coordination will happen. So I think the fact that they have realized that there is a need for Europe to be able to secure its own interests is a starting point. But when we go back all the way to how NATO was formed, is really, that debate between the U.S. and and Europe was already there in the beginning between
Exactly.
Churchill and Roosevelt, right? That relationship is how I see it is one that is, of course, I don't want to call it a love and hate, but it is more than that, because ideologically there's a lot of alignment as well. But in 2025, many of the ties that actually brought them together and held them close are almost irrelevant now. And security is one that I think will be a very hard one to overcome in that relationship, because the U.S. interests, U.S. security priorities are not necessarily aligned with Europe's, especially when there is a huge rivalry that the United States wants to focus on with China. So, yes, there is that concern within European capitals about whether they can actually establish a security mechanism not so reliant on the U.S. support. Yes, there is these remarks now coming, especially since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Yes, when there is an actor like Trump in the office, how EU-US relationship will look like, it's something that almost unpredictable, and it can change from day to day. So I think there's a lot of concerns on the reliability of the United States. That's one. Two, there is the discrepancy between priorities of European capitals or the Brussels and Washington. And I think there's also the perception that, or the feeling that Russian threat will not be limited to Ukraine. I mean, very recently, I believe it was the German foreign minister, or maybe their defense minister, one of the top-ranking German ministers said, we will perhaps see a big war with Russia very soon. Maybe they were planning for 2030. Maybe it will be 2028 will be our last summer without a war. So there is that threat that they perceive is at the door. So that triggers, I think, that feeling of and the need for establishing that security architecture. But without U.S., how they will be able to do that politically without the U.S. Approval, I'm not sure, especially given the fact that there's a big actor that can change the game drastically from one day to another, like Donald Trump in the office. European institutional establishments are not as quickly moving as Donald Trump moves, I think.
Mehmet, just adding to what you said, these are the statements made by Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov. He said that Vladimir Putin does not want to restore the USSR because it is impossible, and he himself has repeatedly said this. And there's one more. As for preparing for an attack on NATO, this is complete stupidity.
I mean, these are political remarks, but when we look at the doctrines, the ideology behind, let's say, Russian invasion of Ukraine, we can see that where that will ultimately go and the ultimate aim is. Of course, the USSR as it was during the Cold War may not be possible. This is not something that perhaps they may not even want. But establishing that Russia's hegemony or as a superpower and that bipolar world setting is perhaps something that doctrine is still seeking to establish. So, yeah, it may not be through attacks per se on NATO. Maybe we will not see a hard confrontation between NATO and Russia. But that doesn't mean that the political influence or the sphere of their military influence is not something that they would want to expand. I think they want to still have that USSR mentality or the Russian Empire mentality, but whether the methods will be same as USSR or whether that will be materializing or turning into a hard confrontation with NATO, that perhaps may change. On your previous question, though, regarding Turkey, I mean, Donald Trump's remarks are, he says, Turkey is an ally that is very vital for NATO. They're a tough cookie when we need tough cookies and things like that. I mean, I think at times he says certain words and uses certain phrases that we just got to leave it because it is Trump. But the acknowledgement that Turkey is a very vital member, one of the founding, nearly founding members of NATO, Turkey's role in that security mechanism is very important. I think everybody acknowledges that. And Turkey's role, moreover, beyond NATO and the region in terms of its interference as a mediator in different conflicts around the world, Turkey's role in Syria redevelopment, I think these are some of the key moments that Donald Trump acknowledges and realizes. And this is why he does not, compared to previous administration, he does not allow room for Turkey to be sidelined.
If I may, just one quick one. That is, for the next 3 years and 2 months, Europe needs to make a decision. Are they more afraid of Vladimir Putin, or are they more afraid of Donald Trump? That's how this is going to play out.
Nurhan, now let's switch our attention from Ukraine to what's happening in the occupied Gaza Strip. There were some statements made by the Israeli government. Netanyahu is expected to visit Donald Trump at the end of this month to discuss the second phase of the ceasefire in Gaza. There have been many developments. There were attacks yesterday at the Al-Aqsa Mosque as well. There were attacks on UN agencies in Jerusalem. Where do we stand? And most importantly, UNICEF has also said that it treated 9,000 children just in October alone for malnutrition. What's going on? What can we expect from the second phase of this ceasefire agreement? And where does the International Stabilization Force stand?
It's so normal results because those kids, those children, how they gonna have the humanitarian or enough humanitarian aid, and those humanitarian aid still stuck in the Rafah gate borders. They are talking about, which is something very, very interesting, they are talking about the second phase, and they are still till now didn't implement the first phase properly. They are just waiting for the last Israeli hostage body to be found in Gaza Strip with the Egyptian support and the Red Cross. But phase one still, we are waiting to implement phase one. A couple of days ago, the Israeli administration asked Egypt to open Rafah gate border from only one side, which is the side from Gaza to Egypt, to allow Gaza people to leave Gaza. Here, Egypt responded in a very firm way, which we will not allow to open the Rafah gate border only from one side. We will not allow Gaza people or Palestinians in general to get displaced outside Palestine. If we decide to, or if we will decide to open Rafah gate borders, we will open it from both sides. Here, Israel already decided throwing or blaming Egypt that, okay, it's your problem. If you don't want to open Rafah gate border from this only one side, so it's your problem, it's not our problem. We asked you, we said, if you don't want, it's your problem. So they are playing it, they are trying to manipulate even. They are playing it in a very weird way. So this is this is what's UNRWA or UNICEF, the last report of UNICEF about the cases of children in Gaza. This is something so normal as a result of banning humanitarian aid trucks to enter Gaza. And even it's not only about humanitarian aid, it's about medical supplying. Even lots of hospitals, not lots, all hospitals in Gaza now out of operation because of what? Because of lack. They are all suffering from lack of medical equipments. So this result is so normal. And on 8th of December, which 2 days ago, Israel, and let me be very specific, a group of officials from Jerusalem municipality, they attacked the headquarters of UNRWA in East Jerusalem, and after the attack, they cut the communication, and they started kicking the UNRWA employees out of the building, and they removed and replaced the flag of United Nations with the flag of Israel. Despite the fact of earlier of 2025, already Israel banned any kind or type of activities or operation of UNRWA inside Israel and east of Jerusalem, which is already totally against the international law. So even if they ban the operations or activities by UNRWA, they shouldn't, they cannot even attack the building, because this building is still, it's an asset, belongs to United Nations, even despite the fact of banning any type or kind of activities. And Israel is a member of United Nations. They have to obey to those rules, but definitely we can all see, obviously, that Israel is breaking all laws and rules, international laws. So this behavior from them is something so normal.
What is the point of attacking UNRWA?
Exactly.
I mean, what is the motivation behind that? I think this is something that we need to look at. What does UNRWA does, and that is found to be a threat to Israel? Exactly. UNRWA is providing different services to Palestinians, Palestinian refugees in different parts of the region, right? And it also keeps a record of each Palestinian refugee, each Palestinian that they serve. In other words, UNRWA is keeping a record that there is Palestinians in these areas that are refugees, that they need to go back, basically. It is actually writing history. Yes. In the sense that it is recording the Palestinian population, because one day if Israel successfully eliminates all the Palestinians from the Palestinian lands, UNRWA documents will show that one day there used to be Palestinians here. The reason why Israel is attacking UNRWA is to eliminate that record, to eliminate that activity that is recording
any proof, yes,
or documenting the fact that Palestinians were here, because Israel's ultimate aim is to depopulate Gaza, depopulate all the occupied territories from Palestinians. And when they do that, they do it in a way that they don't just kill people, they of course destroy all the infrastructure, they destroy the capacity of the land to be actually planted or used for agriculture. They kill animals. I mean, they have no limits in destruction, so that Palestinian lands are not once again they cannot be rehabilitated by Palestinians. And one of the reasons, one of the ways to do that is to basically to eliminate all the documentation that shows Palestinians were here. This is why they also attack media, because it is being recorded live, right? This is why deliberately they have killed more than 250 journalists. This is why they do not allow any international media, independent international media, to go into Gaza and document what is taking place there.
If
this
I could,
yes.
And one of the reasons why all of this is happening is because the government of the State of Israel knows that it can do it and no one's going to stop them. So you have very passionate voices throughout the world, heads of state, heads of government. We're sitting in the largest city in Turkey, but in Ankara, the guy that's been the most passionate, who's been the most visible with respect to supporting the issues relating to Palestinians, condemning Israel action in Gaza, is President Erdogan. But Israel knows that President Erdogan, that the Gulf states, that President Sisi in Egypt, they will only go so far in terms of trying to exert pressure. They will not use their military to force Israel to make changes.
They will not risk it.
And Israel, and it's the same sort of situation with Russia and NATO and the European Union. They're afraid of what Russia is going to do. Russia's not going to do anything to the EU or to NATO. But everyone is convincing themselves that they will. So with Israel and those that oppose, it's the same sort of thing. Well, we don't want to risk it. Does anyone really believe that if an armored column from the Sinai went up to the Rafah border and just tore through it, tanks, armored personnel carriers, etc., with 100,000 troops, Turkish, Jordanian, Egyptian, that Israel's going to fire on them? That Israel's going to be killing those people? No. But no one's calling the bluff. Prime Minister Netanyahu knows that, and that's why all of this continues to happen, and it will continue to happen because there's no consequence.
And as a result, and as what Dr. Mehmet mentioned already, this was behind the request from Egypt just to open from one side. What is the purpose behind asking Egypt to just open this side, like leaving Gaza? Okay, what about...
You can leave but can't return.
But you cannot return, right. And we cannot provide this area with any element or anything just to let those human beings inside to be alive, any type of humanitarian aid or medical suppliers, etc.
You see, nowadays we are celebrating, I mean, you know, the fact that the war ended in Syria. It's been 1 year since the regime has changed. I mean, suffering has ended. You know, they're rightfully celebrating their victory, the Syrian the population, the Syrian people. I mean, we are happy that a conflict has finally come to an end. But there was similarities between what happened in Israel and what in Gaza and occupied territories, and you know the conflict or the war on Syrians themselves by the Assad regime. There were similarities, but one of the key differences is that Syrians were able to escape, and they were able to return.
Yes.
But Palestinians, they cannot even escape. They cannot escape, let alone return. I think that, you know, the fact that everything is, they're closed to the war, to the rest of the world.
And in Syria, other countries did use their military.
Other countries...
They did go into this territory of Syria and say, we're going to do what we can to stop it. You know, Russia
well, I mean,
was on their
I'm not
side
sure if they were
that,
doing it to stop it or to protect their own interest. I mean,
but
Russia was there.
They were there.
Not because they were trying to stop anybody, but they were backing Assad regime. Iran was there to protect its interests through its proxies as it opens gateway to south. U.S. is there to protect its own interests. Türkiye had to enter into Syria to secure its borders. I mean, these people, nobody. I mean, when Obama said using chemical weapons would be our red line, many red lines were also crossed in Syria. But the borders were open. Turkey opened its borders, and many other regional countries. There's millions of refugees, but the problem with the situation in Gaza is one of the many problems, of course, is that people cannot even escape.
They cannot decide. Israel is deciding everything. Israel is deciding on their behalf. That's why in the current ceasefire, Israel decided to deport the Palestinian hostages to Egypt. Till now, they cannot even see their families. After how many years in the Israeli prisons? They just deported and they cannot enter and go back to Palestine. And their families, as they are already as well stuck over there, they cannot leave because already we all know the situation in Gaza. How they will leave? Already they are displaced so many times. They are now living under or in a tent in this weather, in this circumstances, very bad circumstances. So Israel is deciding everything. Even Israel will decide who will reconstruct Gaza in the second phase, as they are now talking about moving to the second phase, which is mainly talking about governing Gaza, who's gonna govern Gaza, who's gonna rule Gaza, and the reconstruction. Israel will decide which country will support or will financial Gaza Strip to be reconstructed again.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Tuesday called terrorist group YPG, the Syrian wing of the PKK terror group, to adhere to March 10 agreement it signed with the new administration in Damascus.
Suriye devrimi son bir yılda en zoru inşallah geride bırakmıştır. İnanıyorum ki önce Yüce Allah'ın yardımıyla sonra da Suriye yönetiminin basiretli, dirayetli, kuşatıcı, kucaklayıcı ve adaletli politikalarıyla bir daha eski kötü günlere dönüş olmayacaktır. Bilhassa 10 Mart mutabakatının altında imzası olanlar tarafından ahde vefa ilkesi gereğince hayata geçirilmesi önemli bir düğümü çözecektir. Mutabakatın suhuletle uygulanması, istikrarsız, bölünmüş ve güçsüz Suriye'ye yatırım yapan şer odaklarının hesaplarını alt üst edecektir. Böylece Suriye toprak bütünlüğünü haiz, müreffeh, muzaffer ve bölgesinin muteber bir ülkesi olarak istikbale yürüyecektir. Filistin'de de mazlumların sabrı zaferle taşlanacak, oraya da özgürlük ve barış gelecek. 1967 sınırlarında başkenti Doğu Kudüs olan egemen bir Filistin devleti muhakkak Allah'ın izniyle kurulacak. 10 yıllardır büyük acılar çekmiş, tarifsiz işkencelerden geçmiş, yakınlarını, çocuklarını kaybetmiş, evleri yıkılmış, hayatları ve toprakları çalınmış Filistin halkı kendi öz yurtlarında emniyet içinde yaşayacak. Bunun önünü hiçbir kirli, kanlı ve sinsi plan kesemeyecek.
Welcome back to the program. Mehmet, I want to ask you about this statement that was made by Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan in Doha at the Doha Forum. He said that governance of Gaza must precede Hamas's disarmament in the ceasefire deal. And he was saying that, okay, yes, we can disarm Hamas, but there are certain things that need to happen before that. For example, aid must be provided to the Palestinians. Israeli forces must withdraw from the occupied Gaza Strip. Tell me more about this statement, Mehmet, and tell me what else is required before we start disarming Hamas.
I think what else is required is a clear and tangible, actionable plan. That is absent right now. Before Hamas can disarm, we need Hamas and Palestinians, they need to know who and how the Gaza will be governed by. Who will govern Gaza? Who will be involved in the decision making? For how long that body will be there? How they will do it? I mean, right now we are saying we are in phase 2, but phase 1 is not complete yet. Delivery of aid is still restricted. Hostage exchange is still not complete, and there is still violation to ceasefire. The killing has slowed down. It hasn't stopped. There's still killing that takes place every day. So the phase one is not even complete, let alone talking about phase two. So how can Hamas disarm right now as a requirement? If this is something that they are demanding, how can that take place when phase two is so unclear, let alone finishing? We're not even talking about the fact that phase one is not even fully complete. So what is required? Of course, tangible and action. The action plan must be sheer. The action plan must be transparent, and it also needs to have the buy-in from the Palestinians. It needs to have the trust of the Palestinians before they can hand over the governance or their future in the hands of a body that they don't know, how they will be governed. If the ceasefire is actually holding, if the humanitarian aid is not restricted, if the phase two steps are defined clearly, presented clearly, and when they are presented, if they actually include the agency of Palestinians, then I think there will be no problem in disarmament of Hamas.
John, coming to you, the Israeli cabinet has approved the budget for 2026, and they're spending $35 billion on just defense. And, revisiting what Mehmet said a while ago, Israelis just want to kill.
Yeah. There's no question. I think what we're going to see, as he was teeing up, we've blown through phase one, we're into phase two, we haven't completed phase one, and they'll probably soon announce we're in 3 and 4. But I think what you're going to see, what Israel's going to do, is they're going to take that yellow line, that area which is about half of Gaza, and they're going to, with the backing of the U.S. administration, and the U.S. administration is going to coerce some of the Gulf countries to say, put money into that, start building that up, despite what's happening and the suffering and the lack of assistance going into the rest of Gaza. And Israel is going to continue to spend money on U.S. weapons. We give them about $3 billion plus a year to do that. And this is a country we've talked about before, $200 plus billion in foreign reserves. Is any of that going to be given to repair what they've done to the Palestinians in Gaza? No. But they're going to continue to grow their budget and defense budget. And you have to then ask, what are they spending all this money on? And in part, it's the Trump administration. By U.S. law, Israel's supposed to have a qualitative edge over everyone else. But because of the transactional nature of President Trump, Saudi Arabia is getting more, Qatar's getting more, the UAE's getting more, Egypt's going to get more, Jordan's going to get some. And so Israel is basically in this race that they go up, we're going to have to keep going up.
Nurhan, just to end our program here, final few minutes, I want to talk about the situation in Lebanon because the government, obviously, President Aoun, he has said that talks with Israel are just aimed at ending the hostilities. At the same time, the European Union is also looking at options to strengthen Lebanon's internal forces, the Lebanese army. Where do we stand? 31st December is also, a few weeks later. How will we proceed with this disarmament issue of Hezbollah?
Let me just start with the deadline, December 31st, for Hezbollah to be totally disarmed and to give down or as a party its weapons. This very clear, it will not happen. And already the officials of Hezbollah released that this will not happen, and they are rejecting all ways for any kind of disarmament. This is the first thing. The second very significant thing happened earlier this month. The civilian talk between Israel and Lebanon. This actually, Omar, it's the first time in decades for a civilian negotiation between Lebanon and Israel. This civilian talk happened in UNIFIL headquarters in Lebanon, located in South Lebanon, specifically in Naqoura area. Two delegates were there, one from Lebanon and other one from Israel. The Lebanese representative was Simon Karam. Simon Karam was former United States, Lebanese ambassador in United States. He's very independent politician. He's not belonging to any party in Lebanon, which this was so significant. For the other side, for the Israeli representative was Yuri Resnik. He was the envoy, actually the Israeli envoy in Lebanon, and they had their talk in UNIFIL headquarters in Naqoura. The talks basically focused on ceasefire, which already they signed it last November 2024, monitoring ceasefire, and some economical ties talks. There were no talks related to normalization or peace agreements between Israel and Lebanon. At the same time, Israel is continuing bombing Lebanon, especially they are focusing on south of Lebanon. They are bombing as what they are or what described as Hezbollah infrastructure. Especially yesterday, they bombed a very big area in south of Lebanon. They described it as Hezbollah infrastructure, destroying Hezbollah infrastructure, and it was belonging to Ar-Radwan forces, which is the strongest forces belongs to Hezbollah. What will happen after 31st of December? All eyes will be in Lebanon, but still the very significant thing that no one cares about Lebanon. Lebanon is suffering from lack of support from international community. The reason why no one cares about Lebanon, because maybe they are saying it's already corrupted country. The corruption is from all aspects in the country, political, economical, even in terms of social life. In people, it's very corrupted. When I say social life, it means the big and deep division, sectarian division between Lebanese people from different sects. Lebanon has 18 sects, and people, they are just trying to fight between each other's. Why? But just for religious purposes. So actually, no one cares about this country because of the corruption, deep corruption that they are suffering, or Lebanon suffering from.
Dr. Nurhan Al-Baya, John Kavulich, and Dr. Mehmet Çelik, thank you so much for being on the program today and for sharing your insights as usual.
Thank you so much.
That brings us to the end of our program. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.